It didn't just go wrong. It was engineered to fail from the very beginning, and the moment that 47-minute Highgrove meeting ended, everything we thought about reconciliation inside the royal family started to collapse. The story doesn't begin at Highgrove. It begins with desperation disguised as diplomacy. What was presented as a quiet family reunion was, according to Tom Bower,
Meghan Markle felt humiliated on Prince Harry's most recent UK trip, and that the trip turned into a nightmare, forcing Markle and her children to return home to California earlier than they had hoped.
Something far more calculated, a last attempt by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry to reverse the damage of Megxit and claw their way back into royal relevance. But here's the twist. While they believed they were walking into an opportunity, King Charles had already turned it into a controlled test. And from the very first second, the power balance was not in their favor. Tom Bower's involvement in this revelation is not accidental.
I do think that when you're mocked so publicly as they've been, their value begins to nosedive pretty quickly. And I don't think they're finding any more sources of income. And with the stream of money they're spending on security, on mortgages, on just plain living, I think they can see the end of the road within 5 years at best. And they've got a real financial problem now.
He isn't just any commentator, he's one of the most persistent observers of the Sussex saga, someone who has tracked every fracture, every contradiction, every public statement. And according to him, Harry and Meghan didn't return to the United Kingdom out of nostalgia or family longing. They came with a mission, a strategic one. They needed to undo the fallout of Megxit, rebuild bridges, and more importantly, restore their lost credibility.
Meghan and Harry's crisis, completely of their own making, is they have no major projects, no major money earners. And so they're more desperate than ever. And I think that they don't know what to do other than to try and come back to Britain and rebuild themselves as some sort of members of the royal family.
But what they didn't anticipate was that the palace had already decoded their plan. Because behind the scenes, everything had shifted. Their business ventures were no longer carrying the same weight. Meghan's lifestyle brand was struggling to maintain momentum. Harry's once powerful charitable connections were facing complications. The influence they once commanded through royal association had started to fade. And suddenly, the monarchy, the very institution they distanced themselves from, became their only remaining source of legitimacy. That's when Highgrove stopped being just a meeting and became a necessity. But here's where the strategy deepens. They didn't just show up asking for access. They needed a reason, a narrative that wouldn't expose their intentions. And that's where the Invictus Games entered the picture. Harry's involvement gave them the perfect cover. A legitimate, public-facing excuse to return to the UK without appearing to beg for reintegration. On the surface, it looked organic. But beneath it, something else was unfolding. Because King Charles didn't just see his son returning, he saw the pattern. At first, there was a glimpse of openness. Reports suggest King Charles even offered Harry accommodation at Buckingham Palace, a gesture that looked like reconciliation. But then, something shifted. Harry didn't immediately accept. The hesitation mattered. The delay mattered. And suddenly, the offer was withdrawn. Quietly, no announcement. No explanation. Just gone. That wasn't a scheduling issue, it was a signal. Because by this point, according to Bower, King Charles had already connected the dots. He recognized that this wasn't just a visit, it was an attempt to reverse Megxit itself. A calculated move to regain status, commercial value, and royal credibility. And once the king saw that clearly, everything about the meeting changed. It was no longer about welcoming them back, it was about controlling the narrative. And this is where the real shift of power happens. Harry may have believed he understood the dynamics of his family. But he underestimated one thing: his father is now the king. Nothing slips past him. Charles had watched the Hollywood deals falter. He had seen the brand struggles. He knew the charitable influence was weakening. And instead of reacting emotionally, he responded strategically. He didn't cancel the meeting that would have created public backlash. Instead, he allowed it to happen, but rewrote its entire structure. What was expected to be a warm reunion was transformed into something cold, precise, and contained. The Highgrove meeting wasn't open. It wasn't flexible. It wasn't even welcoming. It was controlled. Private, short, Every detail managed, every interaction limited. The openness Charles had once shown, especially during earlier moments when Harry hinted at returning, was gone, replaced with boundaries. Hard ones. Invisible to the public, but unmistakable to those inside the room. And Meghan Markle felt it immediately. She arrived expecting something closer to reconciliation. A softening. A sign that time had healed wounds. But instead, what she walked into felt less like a family reunion and more like a formal negotiation between distant parties. No warmth. No symbolic gestures. No visible affection. Just structure. And silence where emotion was expected. That silence, it wasn't accidental. It was the message. Because, according to Bauer, this meeting had two very specific purposes, and neither of them involved restoring Harry and Meghan's royal role. The first was to make it absolutely clear. There is no automatic path back into working royal life. No shortcuts. No quiet reinstatement. The second was even more strategic. It was about protecting King Charles himself. Because there was a growing risk. If Harry's requests, especially around security and accommodation, continued to be denied, there was a possibility he could frame the situation publicly as rejection. As a father, turning away his son. As a grandfather, refusing his grandchildren. And that narrative? That could damage the monarchy. So Charles acted before that narrative could form. By allowing the Highgrove meeting to happen, he created proof of contact. Evidence of willingness. A controlled interaction that demonstrated he wasn't shutting Harry out completely. But, at the same time, he made sure the boundaries were unmistakable. The distance wasn't coming from him, it was the consequence of past actions, public criticisms, and broken trust. And then came the most revealing move of all, Queen Camilla's presence. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't casual. It was deliberate. Camilla had witnessed the breakdown of the relationship over time. She had seen the damage, the tensions, the public fallout, and by being present at Highgrove, she became something more than just the queen consort in the room. She became a witness, a safeguard, someone who could confirm exactly what was said, how it was said, and what tone defined the meeting. In other words, this wasn't just a family conversation anymore. It was documented, controlled, and protected from reinterpretation. Because trust, at this point, was no longer assumed, it was managed. And Meghan noticed something else. There were no cameras, no official photographs, no shared images, no visual proof of reconciliation. That absence wasn't an oversight, it was strategy. Because a single photograph could have changed everything. It could have been used to suggest unity, to imply restoration, to create headlines that the Sussexes were back within the royal fold. So the palace removed the possibility entirely. No photos, no statements, no public reassurance, nothing. And as that realization settled in, the true nature of the meeting became impossible to ignore. And that's when the illusion finally shattered. Because what happened after those 47 minutes didn't just confirm failure, it exposed a complete collapse of strategy. There was no apology, not a single word of regret offered inside Highgrove. According to Tom Bauer, that absence wasn't just noticed, it defined the entire outcome. Because without acknowledgement of past damage, there was nothing for King Charles to rebuild on. No foundation, no trust, and most importantly, no justification to restore what had been lost. What Harry and Meghan may have seen as a reset. The king treated as unfinished business that hadn't even begun to be resolved. And that's when the dynamic shifted again. Because realizing that their attempt to re-enter the royal structure had failed, the focus moved somewhere else toward their children. This wasn't random. Critics quickly began pointing out that Archie and Lilibet suddenly became central to the narrative. A softer angle, a more emotional connection. A way to reach King Charles not as monarch, but as grandfather. But even this move didn't go unnoticed. The palace saw it coming. King Charles allowed contact with his grandchildren, but with limits. Careful ones. Controlled ones. Because while he wasn't willing to close that door completely, he made sure it couldn't be used as leverage. The children would not become a pathway back into royal duties. That line was drawn clearly. And quietly. But beneath that decision was something even bigger. A calculation about the future of the monarchy itself. Because any public warmth toward Harry and Meghan, any visible reconciliation, would have created confusion. it would have blurred the line of authority. And more critically, it could have weakened Prince William's position as the future king. That risk was something Charles refused to take. So every part of the Highgrove meeting was designed not just to manage the present, but to protect the future. And this is where the consequences become impossible to ignore. Because when the meeting ended, nothing had changed. No security arrangements were approved. No agreement about Harry's return to the United Kingdom was reached. No new role was discussed. No privileges were restored. Everything that Harry and Meghan needed, status, visibility, legitimacy, remained out of reach. And then came the moment that defined it all. 47 minutes. That's all it took for the entire plan to collapse. 47 minutes inside Highgrove, and years of positioning, expectation, and strategy unraveled without a single public confrontation. No argument, no dramatic fallout, just a controlled, contained conclusion that left no room for interpretation. And Meghan Markle felt it. Because as the meeting ended, there was reportedly an expectation something. Anything that could be taken away as proof that it had gone well. A sign, a gesture, a statement. But nothing came. No reassurance, no validation, just silence. And silence, in this context, was louder than any rejection. So she stood up, took the children, and left Highgrove. Not with headlines, not with images, not with influence, just left. Returning to Montecito without the one thing they had come for, a visible shift in their royal standing. Meanwhile, Harry didn't follow immediately. He stayed behind, preparing for the Invictus Games, continuing the very cover that had brought them there in the first place. But now, that cover looked different, less like strategy and more like necessity, because the reality had changed. They hadn't regained access. They hadn't rebuilt trust. They hadn't secured a path back. And perhaps most critically, they hadn't controlled the narrative. Because King Charles had already done that. By allowing the meeting, he prevented claims of rejection. By controlling the conditions, he avoided giving away power. By removing photographs, he blocked any attempt at public reinterpretation. And by including Queen Camilla as a witness, he ensured that nothing could be rewritten later. Every move was deliberate, every outcome predicted, and every advantage stayed exactly where he wanted it with the crown. But here's where the tension doesn't end. It escalates. Because what happened at Highgrove didn't just close a door, it revealed how far the distance has grown. A father and son meeting under conditions of control. A daughter-in-law expecting warmth and receiving structure. A monarchy protecting itself not from outsiders, but from those once at its center. And now, the questions are no longer about reconciliation. They're about consequences. What happens when Harry returns to the United States without progress on security? What happens when the narrative begins to shift again, this time shaped by silence rather than statements? What happens when future meetings, if they happen at all, are built on even tighter restrictions? Because if Highgrove was controlled, what comes next could be completely closed. And somewhere behind all of this, one detail refuses to settle the warning from Tom Bower. A warning not about the past, but about what could happen next if these patterns continue. Because if Harry and Meghan attempt another approach, another return, another strategy, will the door even open again? Or has the monarchy already decided that the next meeting won't last 47 minutes? Because it won't happen at all.